Good evening. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Drinkshares Last Call. I am your host tonight, Rebecca S. Lieber, also known as Becky, also known as Leaves. I am joined tonight by my kids just figured out they can call me that, so it's a really big thing at school right now. Oh, I'm also running for president, apparently, according to the posters on the hallway. So anyway, thank you for joining us on this really cool and special edition of DLC tonight. I'm really excited about our guest, nerding out. Christine Renicky is joining me tonight as my co-host. We are a little short-staffed tonight. As you know, Kara is infested with a parasite that she will soon birth and raise as her own. It's very kind of her.
Could be happening now for all we know.
It could be. We don't know. She's
know.
just, I don't know. Anyway. Also, Joe, for all we know, could also be birthing a parasite because no one has heard of him. He's fallen off the face of the planet because
we don't know.
I don't know. I think he's finishing a book or something. Whatever. So we're a little short-staffed tonight. But I promise you, we will make up for it in sarcasm, wit, and dirty jokes. And if I have to say the F word just to make you all feel better, I'll do that. I'll do that just for you guys. So our guest tonight is actually Caitlin Brennicky, cousin of our Christine Brennicky. She is here.
C. Brennickies.
Yeah, this is Battle of the C. Brennickies. Tonight we are going to talk about, as I heard this weekend from a person at a party, libraries and why they are magical. An adult human being actually said the word library to me, and I waited thinking
library,
and it was not a joke. And I was like,
"Oh, were they? Well, they could have been drunk."
Not yet. They weren't. So, Anyway, as I said, Caitlin's here to talk about libraries and why they're magical, special places that only the best types of human beings will get to be part of. And we're going to share that magic with you tonight. But before we get started, proper introductions are due, even though there's 3 of us tonight. Christine, I will give you the floor. So, what do you, hold on, I forgot. The special super secret question for tonight is...
Oh, right.
What is the funniest, weirdest, or most interesting book you ever picked up and checked out from a library?
Ooh. That's a thinker, Becky. Well, I'll start with what I'm drinking and what I'm about to be reading. So I've got my Master Brew kombucha, which I tried months and months ago and hated because I tried the no flavor kind. But it turns out if you add a flavor, it's not so bad.
Is that what JF drank and ruined his San Francisco experience?
Maybe. I think that sounds familiar. That's reaching far back in my memory.
It was. That was when I months ago when I first started listening to the podcast.
It was like half a year ago.
It was like 6 whole months ago, Becky. What?
Really long time. Yeah, I struggle with more than 2 days ago, so.
Understandable.
Yeah. And then I get to read this joy once NaNoWriMo's over. Stop
moving it. Literary Wonderlands, the journey through the greatest fictional worlds ever created. Oh, that's really neat.
It's beautiful.
It has a really cool cover.
Oh, things falling out of it. There's pictures from books you know and love, and it's all about their worlds. So I think this will be great to help me with world building stuff.
Oh, definitely.
And
that's really cool.
Fun read.
Where did you find that at?
I got it for free because I'm on the Young to Publishing list, and they send out ARCs and new releases for free to people on that list. And it arrived in a package, and it was very exciting.
That is very exciting.
Yeah, got a little letter from the publisher.
Oh, that's cool.
From the publisher. Yep.
All I get in the mail is loot crates.
Oh, that sounds fun. I never had
it. It is fun, but it's not free bugs.
Yeah.
But I have to pay for loot crate, so.
So I'm kind of blanking on the, what was it? Funny, strange, interesting.
So basically, have you ever gone to the library looking for a book and found another book that you're just like, I need to read this?
Yeah, I'm blanking, but I haven't been to a library in a really long time. So this is going far back in my memory vaults again, and I'm blanking. But I can say that growing up, we used to rent lots and lots of old musicals, like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers from our library, and lots of Nancy Drew books, and many other things. So there's that.
Wah wah.
Sorry. I'm failing.
That's okay. Caitlin, I'm sure, will make up for it, or she won't, and it's fine. It will be the first secret question to tank miserably. So
yeah.
Now I will give the floor to our extra special guest, Caitlin Brennicky. So,
hello.
Tell us who you are, what you're drinking, what you're reading, and answer the secret question.
All right. So tonight I am drinking a blueberry Pinot Noir.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's from a local winery in Romeo, and it's pretty tasty.
Do you like blueberry flavored things in general?
I generally do, yes. But I like blueberry tea.
Hate blueberry things.
That is silly. We are not related anymore.
Must not be.
And for the library question, I don't know. I'm one of those people who, like, I'm super practical, and so when I go to the library, I go there because, like, I need a resource book. Like, oh, I want to learn how to crochet, I'm going to get a crochet book. Or, like, I don't know.
You find what you're looking for when you go.
Yeah, I'm a functional library user, so I can't say that I've gone to, like, go for fun and, like, pick out books. I don't know.
You've never just gone and wandered through the stacks to see what you could find?
Not really. I guess that makes me, like, the worst, like, library science degree holder person, but...
No, you just know where everything's at, so you don't need to wander. You're like, oh, I want that book. I know it's on the third shelf in the fourth stack, you know?
Yeah.
You understand the Dewey Decimal System, so you don't need to wander.
No one really uses the Dewey Decimal System anymore, so that's kind of a skill that's useless, unfortunately.
It was kind of a skill that was useless before.
I mean, that's probably true. Just wander. You'll find it. There's librarians. They work there for a reason. So yeah, that's my answer, is that I don't have an answer because I go to the library for practical books, and that's not exciting at all.
Nerd.
Go for two.
Yeah.
That's okay. So what are you reading tonight?
I actually have it out of reach, but it is an Anthony Bourdain cookbook that I just got last week that I'm super excited about. It's called Appetite, and it's like his first cookbook in like a very long time. And I'm
just read about that in the newspaper today.
Well, he was here like 2 weeks ago, and I went as my birthday present from June, so I had to wait forever to go, and I'm super pumped. And my favorite part is that you get to the dessert page, and it just says, fuck desserts, and then he talks about how he likes to eat cheese after a really good meal instead, and then you skip to the next page, and you're into soups and stocks.
That's so funny.
He literally skips dessert. It's my favorite part. I even like showed that to my mother, and she thought it was hilarious. She's like, well, then where are the desserts? And I was like, Mom, there aren't desserts. Like, he just made it very clear that they are not his favorite thing.
Oh man,
he doesn't trust pastry chefs. So
I'm gonna family share, because that just reminded me of how when the Thong Song was out, however many years ago that was, that your mom thought it was a riot and used to sing it. It's a good time.
Our family's really special.
My mom went through a phase when I was in high school where she suddenly, like, every one-hit wonder that had come out in the 90s, and this is in the early 2000s, like, she was just discovering, so she was, like,
all of the 90s music.
Right. She was super into the Four Non-Blondes song, and, like, you name it, it was like, if it was a 90s one-hit wonder, my mom had it on a CD, and it was right around the time that I taught her how to use Napster before it was tanked, and they ripped it off the internet, so my mom just had, like, a bunch of one-hit wonder songs, and then, like, Blink-182's All the Small Things, because she loved it. In fact, the other day, Mom and I were shopping, and I have Blink-182's new album that came out like a month or two ago. And I was like, oh, Mom, you'll appreciate this. And I put on one of the new songs knowing she'd have no idea what it was. And she recognized the band immediately. She's like, this sounds like the band that sang that one song about the flowers on the stairs. So like, how do you know that?
Flowers on the Stairs song.
Moms are weird.
They are. So I was like, yeah, it's the same band that sang all the small things. She's like, oh, do you have that on your phone? So then we had to listen to like all of the Blink-182 songs. And she's like writing, my mom, okay, I know this is sidetracking, but I do love my mom, but she has a purse like Mary Poppins. And so she's got like bags upon bags. It's like Perception in there. And she has like a little Ziploc makeup bag that she keeps notes and stuff in. And so she like pulls out a notebook and she starts handwriting all of these. What's that song? Okay. And she's like writing these songs down from Blink-182 that she's going to look up later. I love my mom. She's hysterical.
Aww.
So anyway, I actually do have a library fun book story. And as you guys know, I introduced myself already. Rebecca S. Lieber, author of Proxy and Intrepid, available on Chanilla.com. Tonight I am drinking leftover beer that was at my house because we had people come into town this weekend. And they left Buffalo Sweat in a can. And it is vanilla bean oatmeal cream stout. It's not terrible, but it's not my favorite. It's a little too bitter for a stout for me. Like, I like smoother stouts.
The description sounds great, though.
Yeah. Like, I love me a dark beer, but I like nitro beers more than I do, like, say, Guinness. And this reminds me of vanilla Guinness. So, it's like the...
Oh, you just sold me.
The like aftertaste is a little phlegmy, which I don't like about dark beers, so that's why I have like I need to find the middle ground. But anyway,
what does that mean?
What do you mean?
What's phlegmy mean?
Like phlegmy, where like you have like
it gives you phlegm
in your throat. Yeah, you've never drank a thick
taste.
No, not the taste. It's like the after effects. Like you drink a thick dark beer and it creates like a phlegmy film in your throat if it's too bitter. Or maybe it's me. I don't know. I'm not a fucking hop aficionado. I don't know how beer science works. I just know it tastes good until that point.
Okay.
Anyway, I am still reading the Aeronauts Windlass, which is the first series in the Jim Butcher steampunk series of an unknown number of books yet to come out. If it's anything like the Codex Lyric, it could be anything like 6. If it's like Dresden Files, it will never be finished. And all your favorite characters will die. So, that being said, when I was 14 or 15, I was in an English class because I went to a small school, I was in an English class in the morning where most of the kids that went to like the technical school in the afternoon went to, because I had art in the afternoon and it was only offered in the afternoon. So I was in a class of what I will delicately call underperformers when it came to academic studies. And I was like constantly finishing my work ahead of other kids, and I was like the curve setter and all the kids hated me. So I would escape into the library because that was the year I finally started to really get into reading. And so I would escape to the school library. Well, the school library wasn't that great. And then the small town 4 miles down the road opened their own library. And I got a free little, membership down there. And I started just going down and perusing the fantasy books and science fiction books and stuff. And then because I am a lover of all things paranormal, I would go over to the paranormal section. And I started getting books like How to Read Auras and How to Discover If You're an Indigo Child. Like, a book called Sextrology, which was all about, not so much about sex, which that wasn't there though, but it was like how your gender versus your zodiac sign. Like, so like if you're a male Capricorn versus a female Capricorn, or if you're born on a cusp and stuff. So I started getting into like all the astrological hippie stuff and the paranormal stuff at the same time.
That's usually every time I go to a bookstore, like I make my loop around, I'll stop at like the fantasy section, and then I always end up at the New Age spot and looking through all that stuff. Yeah, I remember very vividly there was a book, and it was like, what color is your aura? I'm pretty sure that was the name of the book. And I remember taking the test, and it said that I had an indigo aura, and I thought I was super special because like that was like, you're a golden child basically, and you're psychic, all this stuff. So like that went to 17-year-old Becky's head, because I have an ego. So, you? No, not me. That really conceited person in the screen in front of you.
So
See, I had a book like that, but I bought it, and it was called like the 365-day like birthday astrology book.
Oh, yes.
So
yeah.
you looked
I think
up
I had one of those.
yeah, you looked up your actual birthday, and I swear, like I consulted that thing every time I had a crush on a boy because it would tell you like it would actually list like the specific birth dates of like people that you're like most compatible with, people that you would have romantic relationships with, people to avoid. And it was like every time I would get like a new crush, I would find out what their birthday was and like run home and consult my 365-day astrology book to figure out like if we're meant to be. And
I
of
love
course,
this.
like none of it paid off, but it was fun at the time. I think I still have that book, so now I'm like really curious. Like I should bust it out and see.
I think I'm not sure if I'm the one that bought it or if my parents bought it, but there's definitely a book like that at my parents' house. And I remember being like, why isn't this in my possession? Why do they have it? 'Cause I don't think they bought it. I don't know.
what cracks me up about the books that I took out from the library was that, like I said, one of them was called Sextrology, and it had a bright, like orange-red cover with the words in white letters.
Was this in your high school library?
No. This was after. So, like I said, the town next door to us built a library, and it was a small library. But for a girl growing up in a town with not even a gas station, like the idea of a library being within bike riding distance was a really cool idea. And so, what's funny though is I would check out this book, and like I don't know if the lady just trusted me. But like, here's this 16-year-old girl taking out this book called Sextrology and not even like thinking of it. So I was like, "You're awesome, lady."
Yeah.
That was the book that was like years later. I went through and I was reading it again after I hadn't read it in a long time because it had these huge chapter sections for like Capricorn and male and female. So it's really big, detailed descriptions, and it's not just like you're good at being a performer. No, it was like, you have had problems with your mother your entire life because of this one incident that happened to you when you were 5. I'm like, wow, this is spot on and terrifying. But anyway, on the side panels of the book, they had little things on there like numerology and different parts of like stories of the Greek gods that you were named after for your signs and stuff like that, and what the planetary alignments were. And one of them was a list of straight turn-ons and gay turn-ons for both sets or both genders. And the one for straight turn-ons for female Capricorn started off with great hair, big noses, strong chins, tweed, bow ties, professors, travelers.
Rachel, your cardboard cut out.
Yeah. So
bring them out. This is great.
Oh my god.
They got you pegged.
So that made me laugh really hard. Did you guys pick up on the microphone my husband going, "Oh God," as I pulled my cardboard head down to the screen?
I did not hear that.
Of all the times not to hear your husband.
No kidding. He does make some pretty fantastic commentary. Whenever it's always a raid night whenever we film the show. So okay, so enough about my odd childhood and my even odder adulthood. Let's talk about libraries and why they're magical.
I'm game.
Caitlin.
Yes.
Go.
So it occurs to me that I didn't actually say like why I'm qualified to even speak about libraries. Like I'm not just this random person who like I do super love libraries, but like I actually have a master's degree in library and information science from Wayne State in Detroit. So I'm like sort of qualified to talk about this.
Caitlin, you're going to ruin our rebel status with your credentials. Like, why did you have to go in and tell everybody you're qualified?
Well, listen, I went to library school and I didn't become a librarian. So, I mean.
No.
But you do have like 50 million librarian friends.
First, I was an archivist. And if you ask me, that is awesome because.
That's super cool.
I basically said I wanted to like the Indiana Jones of the paper materials. And then instead of like artifacts, like I'm an Indiana Jones of like correspondence. And then a friend of mine worked on a movie with John Rhys Davies and didn't tell me that she was going to have him call me while I was driving my car on my way to school. I almost crashed my car on the freeway because all of a sudden he comes on the phone and says,
and he has a very distinctive voice. So
Yes.
you know immediately who it was.
and he says, I hear you like Indiana Jones, and that's why you're getting a library degree to study archives. And I was just like, this is not happening right now. This is not And then I told him my little like elevator speech that I always tell people, where like, I wanted to be like the Indiana Jones of the paper materials, and no one ever laughs. And John Rhys Davies laughed, and I don't care if no one ever laughs again for the rest of my life, because John Rhys Davies said it was funny and he really liked it and told me it was important. And basically, that validated my life forever. So
Did you then
amazing.
ask him to make a joke about prissy elves before he left you?
No, it was so quick. Listen, I'm surprised I spoke words.
Oh yeah, I understand that.
Because this was like completely unexpected, driving down to Detroit like for my grad school classes.
That's hilarious.
So I'm qualified to talk about libraries because John Rhys Davies laughed at my joke.
That works for me.
That's all I needed to hear. So basically, we know that you guys have all been to a library. You're familiar with the idea of a library, but you probably don't realize all the things that libraries can do for you as a writer. So you know that they hold books. Some of you also might know that they hold research materials in general. Some libraries have genealogy, computer labs, workspaces, things like that. So you know that there's space to write, you know that there's space to research, community spaces, things like that. The one I have in my town has about 20,000, or not 20,000, 12,000 people in it. So we have a pretty decently sized library. So we have things like a coffee shop and a little bookstore that sells out of circulation books and things like that. There's a kids space. It's basically like a playground in the library. It's really cool. But going off all of those things, Caitlin, kind of talk about the resources excuse me, sorry, my beer's coming up, that are available to writers who might not be familiar or might not belong to a library yet.
Okay. So you kind of covered some of it because you did already get into like primary sources, but like libraries, everyone just thinks they have like, you know, your dictionaries, your encyclopedias, and then like fiction books, or like I said, like your cookbooks, your crochet books. But a lot of libraries now actually have like historical collections where they have primary source materials. So they're things that like don't circulate elsewhere. So especially for like, I don't know, researching like historical fiction, like that's something that you might really be interested in.
And you should, especially if you watch our research show and we talk all about that.
And so it's just, I don't know, there's so much more at a library than just the books. I mean, you can pretty much learn anything there, but even like resources, like if you talk to a reference librarian and you say, I want to write a book, where do I start? They might be able to point you to resources about publishing, about how to write your own book, you know, just any sort of resources, not just necessarily researching the content of your book, but how to start writing, or, you know, resources on how to be a better writer, or how to come up with ideas, or how to, I don't know, like, basically, it's not just about the content.
But Caitlin, why would I bother going to a library when I can do all of these things on the internet?
Because the internet is stupid. And librarians have master's degrees and they're smart. Well, especially with, like I said, with primary sources, they're unique materials. So you're not always going to get those things in online, especially if they're not digitized. But also, you never know what you're going to get there. So like an interesting little story, when I was researching, because that's what I do as a library school graduate, for this podcast, I found an interview with Diana Gabaldon in a library magazine. And she said that like when she first wrote Outlander, which I'm imagining everyone watching this knows what Outlander is. And if you don't, then you're living in a hole. She said that she wrote her first book just to practice, because she said, I wanted to learn how to write a book, so I just wrote one.
What did she do originally? I know you told us in a prep, but I can't remember what she did originally.
She was a research professor. And so she was really familiar already with like archives, libraries, historical collections, primary sources. And fun fact, she was watching an episode of Doctor Who, and she saw a Scotsman wearing a kilt and decided, I'm going to write a historical fiction book on Scotland because I already know how to research, because I research for my classes that I teach. So she figured it was easier to look stuff up in a library than just to make stuff up. And that's why she chose historical fiction, because she figured if she didn't have her own imagination, maybe the materials in the library would like point her in the right direction, which I thought was pretty cool. And
your brain thinking, and you get all sorts of inspiration.
And
when you start digging up actual facts.
Yeah.
And for anyone who's like, well, I don't write historical fiction. That's such a small genre, and I don't write that. Anybody who does any kind of world building really needs to be doing historical research, regardless of what you plan on writing, how magical, mythical, fantasy-esque it is. You need to find some basis to start like the bones of your fantasy world on, whether that's different types of governments, different types of politics and parties, religions, languages, and the place to start doing that is at a library.
Exactly. So, and now look, she's like a millionaire and has her show on TV and has like 1,000 Outlander books.
Well, and there's a podcast that I listen to it's called The Journeyman Writer, and it's on Storywonk, and Storywonk has like 10,000 podcasts, and they have an entire series dedicated to just analyzing and breaking down Outlander.
I'm not surprised.
No. They also have one for Buffy, the Marvel Universe, Veronica Mars, Star Trek. They actually do a really cool podcast for Star Trek where they take an old episode from the original series and one of the new series, and they like fight it. Like they have a versus over which episode's better. So it's kind of neat.
Nerds.
Yeah. Says the people having a library podcast episode.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Lovely.
So why is another reason it's good to not just wait for, say, Google to put all of these books up on the internet?
Because that could potentially never happen.
Why not?
I think people think like the magic thing that's going to happen now that the internet is a thing and is huge and is everywhere is that like suddenly everything's going to be online. But like it costs a lot of money and time to digitize stuff. And there is so much stuff out there. Well, I used to work at a private archive, and one of our projects was digitizing photos. And if you want like a really good high resolution, like archive quality photo, it can take upwards of 5 minutes just to scan an individual photograph. So like now if you can imagine, like if you have a historical collection that's like 30 cubic feet of like correspondence, family photographs, scrapbooks, like who has the time or the money to digitize all that?
Well, why can't you just hire some random Joe off the street to be able to do that?
I will tell you why. It's because they don't know what they're doing. The thing with that is you actually want to hire people who like are skilled or trained or at least understand and appreciate like the historical value, not just of the content, but of the item itself. Especially in archives, it's not just about the content, it's about the item. So you have like your intellectual part of it, but then you have your actual like physical part of the item. And there was, some of you might be familiar with the Google Books project, and they were doing it at the University of Michigan. And when I was in grad school, we went there for a tour, and they told us that originally they just hired like random people just to work as like digitizing text. And they were having problems with the books staying open in the cradles for the scanning. So they actually started breaking the book bindings on purpose to get them to lay open so they could scan them. And an archivist who understands like the importance of preservation and like the enduring value of just the object itself as well as the information would never have done that. And you would come up with an alternative way to digitize those pages. So it's not always good to just take random people off the street. As enticing as that may sound, because you can pay them cheaper. And that's why you can't digitize everything. It's impossible. No one wants to pay for libraries and museums and archives in the first place. So getting them to pay for all of that and then more is basically impossible.
Well, I mean, we shut down the Illinois State Museum over a budget crisis here.
Yes,
I'm sure you heard all about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I had people who lost jobs. Like I was friends with, I had a friend who worked there, and she lost her job and had to find a completely new job, like that had nothing to do with what she was certified to do or that she went to school for, basically because the government of the state of Illinois, who is run by a very fiscally tight conservative governor now, decided, fuck culture, fuck learning, we can privatize it. And I don't even know if it opened up again yet, to be honest.
Yeah, and a lot of digitizing projects too. Like I still will see job postings sometimes on my old school listserv. The digitizing projects are almost always grant funded, and the thing with grants is they don't always last forever, and usually
Right.
there's a time period. So like you have this many dollars in like this time period. So it might be a year, it might be 2 years to digitize all of these things. And once the grant's up, even if you didn't finish everything, like you're done. So it's kind of like archives and libraries really have to pick and choose their collections that are the most important to disseminate online and really prioritize that way and only digitize the stuff that's like really important.
Well, I'm really lucky to live near a presidential library because I can drive 4 miles into Springfield and I'm at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library, which I have my issues with Abraham Lincoln being a historian because I'm not big on like canonizing historical figures and treating them like they had no faults, which is why I hate Revolutionary American history. But like there is so much cool stuff that they have there that's not even about Abraham Lincoln. And that's only there because it's a museum and library that has to do with the time period. Like they had an amazing, what do you call it? Like where just stuff comes through the library for a time period and the stuff goes away.
A collection? Exhibit.
Yeah, an exhibit. Thank you. I cannot brain today. Anyway, they had an exhibit over women in the Civil War. Like, it doesn't really have to do with Lincoln, but it has to do with the time period Lincoln was in office. So they can bring stuff like that. And they can talk about when slaves were leaving the South to go fight for Union forces and stuff. So it's you aren't just getting like, oh, here's the life and times of Abraham Lincoln or Thomas Jefferson or, you know, FDR or Reagan or whatever presidential library you go to. It's a slice of history in a museum that is only dedicated to the time period evolving around that person's life. And people like FDR, I mean, he had 4 terms. He didn't finish them, but that's a huge slice of American history that is some really amazing time period. So go check that shit out because you're not going to find it anywhere else. You're not going to have access to it.
Plus, the more you use it, the more people will put money towards it. Because a lot of times budgets are based off of use and circulation statistics and patron numbers. So if you don't use it, you lose it. And that's usually a bummer.
Speaking of things that are funded in libraries and things that are in libraries, can you talk a little bit about how librarians choose the stuff that ends up in a library?
I can. So it's this thing called collection development. It actually has a super fancy name. And it's one of those things that you learn in school. And it's basically how you choose like what you're going to be buying for your library, because libraries have budgets, you know, for their books. They can only spend so much money on books per year. And a lot of times libraries have used bookstores or book sales, as some of you have noticed. And usually that's to like cushion the book budget. So you should probably buy used books from your library because then that means they can buy more awesome new books. But collection development is usually based off of quite a few things. It's based off of circulation numbers. Librarians will check what genres are checked out the most, which authors are popular, what demographics are coming in. So if you have a huge population of teenagers that are using your library, you're going to want to focus more on like YA books or books geared toward teenagers than say like, you know, children's books or adult fiction. I'm friends with quite a few children's and teen librarians, and they actually read a ton of like YA and children's books because they figure that the best way to know about what books are out there is to read them. And a lot of times they'll get into discussions with like the teens coming in their libraries about like, which books do you like right now? Like, what kind of genres are you into? And talk with the patrons. Because I mean, that's the best way to know what your users are want to read is by talking to them. So that's a big part of collection development is just knowing your user base.
Do librarians like tip each other off to new books that have been
there's actually at the ALA conference every year, which is the American Library Association, there's usually authors there and writers there who have like drafts of their books that they give out to librarians so they can read them ahead of time too, which is all pretty cool. And I know a lot of my librarian friends are on Goodreads and they get the books ahead of time so they can read them. And so a lot of times they'll give each other like feedback, especially all those teen librarians. I'm friends with a lot of them. And they
Another thing-
love recommending books.
One of the things I wanted to ask you the other day was, and this is probably fairly self-evident, but I have a feeling it goes deeper. What exactly is a teen librarian? Is it just that they work with that age group and that type of like book demographic, or are there certain like places like in the world in schools that teen librarians work over other librarians?
So teen librarians is exactly what it sounds like. It's a librarian who is hired in to work specifically with teenagers. So not every library is going to have a teen librarian. Like the library where I live is a lot smaller. So the reference librarian works for everyone. Whereas, you know, other libraries that are bigger might actually have a whole section of the library designated just to teenagers. And so they can use that space for homework, for tutoring, for hanging out, you know, teen events, programs. And a lot of times it's almost like the teen librarian almost comes like a mentor sort of to a lot of the students coming in there. But the teen librarians are pretty awesome. And usually they're the ones who know so much about like what teens want to read because they love reading YA, and I love reading YA. So, I mean, I'm not here to judge. I ask my teen librarian friends for book recommendations all the time.
I had to take a break from YA. Like when I started to see the pattern of it was always about like one girl torn between two boys, I'm like, okay, I need to step back. But I'm slowly starting to get like pulled into what is it that Kara writes? New adult? Is that the official?
Yeah.
The official title of what her genre is. So I've graduated, I guess, now that I will be 30 years old in a month, from young adult to new adult. So I'm still reading 10 years under my reading ability level.
I'm already 30 and I still love YA. So the Lunar Chronicles is a really good series.
Oh my God, Caitlin, you're now my best friend in the world. That was the one book series that like, okay, I know it's YA, but I have to finish this. In fact, the book that is sitting under this one right now that I have been waiting to get to because I was already started with this one when I bought it is, now that I finish all of the Lunar Chronicles, the short story anthology that she put out that has to do with like the characters afterwards. And
I have it. I have not read it yet.
I haven't either, but as soon as this puppy's done, that is the next book that I'm reading because I cannot wait for it. But I'm so glad you said that because nobody knows about that book series. And
my teen librarian friends do. You need to be friends with teen librarians.
That makes sense. Teen librarians and high school teachers should. I feel like that's a group that should function together. Yeah.
I feel like you could commiserate a lot together.
Yeah.
Like be each other's support system.
Oh, definitely. Especially the day I had. But like, yeah, the other day, one of my girls that is, she's actually an ESL student. So the fact that she's reading at like that level is amazing to me. But she was reading, I think I saw her when she was reading Cinder, and she was like almost done with the book. So I was like, tell me when you're done with that book so we can talk all about that book. And I just want to talk about it. Yes. Nobody I know is reading that book. So here I am talking to like a 14-year-old girl, and I'm just like, what'd you think of this? And what about this character? And she's like, I know, and this happened, and blah, blah, blah. And she's reading Scarlet right now. So I'm waiting for her to finish that book. But
I don't know if you have Audible or not, or if you're into audiobooks, but I commute 2 hours a day. So like audiobooks keep me alive. The narrator for the Lunar Chronicles is fabulous, and I basically want her to read every book to me ever for the rest of my life.
That's really awesome. Winner for the best placement of a narrator for an audiobook is definitely James Marsters for the Dresden Files.
Oh yeah, you did mention that.
Yeah, that makes me really happy. So, but yeah, I'll have to check that out on audiobook just to hear the cool narrator. So
wait, I have to go back to something really quick since we are still talking about collection development. Sorry, I'm totally going to interrupt you because
No, you're fine. I'm the queen of that. It's only fair.
I brought
getting us back on track.
I brought examples of things for weeding that I'm like so excited about. So part of collection development isn't just buying books, but it's getting rid of the garbage that is in your library that either people aren't reading or is like so outdated and archaic that like it's just literal trash and like you can't even sell it in a used bookstore because it's terrible. So I brought examples of books that have been weeded out of libraries that are hilarious and terrible.
Oh, do tell.
Sounds great.
There is a website that I discovered today actually called awfullibrarybooks.net, and librarians submit books titles to this website and of books that they've weeded that are terrible. And these are 4 examples I found today. One book that was weeded out in the 70s was The Official Guide to Disco Dance Steps. And like, I wish you could have seen the cover. It was like literally a dude in like the white bell bottom, like three-piece suit. It was
like
bad.
chest hair coming out.
Yes. Another one that ties back to an earlier type of book that we were talking about is Cat Astrology, published in 1976 and weeded out of the library this year.
So cats have always been big, I guess. They're not just big since the internet.
Since
Becky,
Egypt.
you missed out on Cat Astrology.
I did.
Because apparently
library for being so small and having such small funding.
It was available in a library in this country within the last year.
If it's being weeded out, then that means I can probably go on Amazon the minute this podcast is over and get it for a penny. So there's hope.
Well, now that I've talked about it, though, there's going to be an increase in demand.
A bunch of people are going to get it on Amazon and sell it on eBay for like $30 as like a coffee table book.
Get on that. Another one that I found was called How to Recognize and Handle Abnormal People, and I really wish I could flip through that because, like,
I'd like to read that.
What does that even mean? Like,
I would see as a historian and a person who loves sociology and social history, I would absolutely love to see what year that was written, just to get an idea of what is considered abnormal. Because, like, the sad part of me wonders if there's like things like homosexuality in there, or if there's things like mental disorders and things like that. But the other part of me really desperately wants to read that for the hilarity of, if those terrible things aren't in there, that book has to be amazing.
Unfortunately, I did not write down the publication date of this one, but it was a very old looking book. And then the last one, which, considering recent events in this country, it made me like extra salty. It was called How to Be the Perfect Wife, Entertaining to Please Him. Let that sink in for a minute. That was from 1969. So,
oh dear.
Yeah, but it's gone now forever, and no one will ever check it out because it will burn.
Good.
Not available at a library near you.
Correct. That is not a book you should read, or it is. I don't know.
I'm not sure if the whole book is available on Google Books, but How to Recognize and Handle Abnormal People. It's a manual for police officers. Is on Google Books. It's from the Louisiana Association of Mental Health, 1954. So it probably is like how to focus on people with like mental issues and stuff. But what they consider
fascinating,
right? What they consider a mental issue would be extremely telling of the times, because I almost guarantee that like anything that's like a schizophrenic or a person with a drug or alcohol problem, or even like, it's from Louisiana, so I'm pretty sure they would consider homosexuality like a mental disorder because they were cretins. But yeah, that would be fascinating.
Yeah, and also how to handle them, I'm sure is just awful.
Well, anyway, you know, like how do you subdue a person who's coming at you like in a rage? So interesting.
Awfullibrarybooks.net though, like it's really funny.
Check it out. I've already been looking.
Like when I got to cat astrology, it's literally like a picture of a cat with like the zodiac sign circle behind it, like floating in space, and it's really great. How would you even know? Like, do people know their cat's birthdays? How would you even look that up? Like, my cat's from the shelter. I don't know when he's born.
I don't even know what year my dog was born in.
So just by Googling cat astrology traits by zodiac sign on tarot.com. So
I'm sure there's lots of internet content out there.
Oh,
the internet has everything. It's terrifying.
Wow.
And wonderful.
Well, and what's sad is, you know, what rule is it that if it exists, it's on the internet and there's porn of it?
Oh God, I hope not cat astrology porn.
Thanks for that image.
You're welcome. That's my job. That's why I'm here.
If there wasn't, there will be now.
Oh, yeah. Why do you think the price of that book's going to go up? So that's something we apparently need to add to the researchatorium.
Yeah. So weeding, it's important. Otherwise, your children might be getting books on abnormal people and cat astrology.
Save the children.
And how. So going back to your discussion on teens and things like that, one of the things that I have noticed at my library is that the community space there is almost taking over the fact that it's a research and workspace. Like there's something going on there every night of the week. There's a game or a book reading or a writer's group or something going on. And I know one of the things that you talked about with libraries when we did our prep night was how the library has kind of become an unannounced safe space, especially for teens and things like that. So can you talk about some of the anecdotes that you were talking about with that?
Yeah. So libraries have really become like a huge safe haven, especially now with like all of these social issues happening. And when after we talked last week and I looked it up more, like I found that this kind of goes even back to like the civil rights. I'm sure it goes back further than this, but I didn't get too far into it. That libraries are not just about like a place to learn, but it's about a place to be safe, to become more informed. So that way you can be safe and make better choices, or, you know, learn how to understand your surroundings and the current environment that you're in. And so what I found was that during the civil rights movement, it was back in 1964, there was a thing called the Freedom Summer Project in Mississippi. And it was to register African American voters who had not been registered because of, you know, terrible things. Yeah, basically the South, you know, Mississippi, not exactly the shiniest history. But anyway, so they set up these like pop-up libraries all over the state called Freedom Libraries. And like this, not the sole purpose, but like the major purpose of it was to give resources to African American people so that way they could register to vote, learn how to actually vote, use a ballot. They helped with literacy issues if there were any issues like that, because I mean, we know that that was a way that they prevented people from voting, which is awful. And so like that I thought was like really interesting, because it kind of reflects how libraries have handled Ferguson and like Black Lives Matters now. And it's sad that that's something that still has to happen, but it's amazing that libraries continue to be like a safe haven and a resource for people. And I remember during Ferguson, I was in school when that happened, or I had just graduated. So I still had friends who were very active, like in library science stuff on Twitter. And I found out that the Ferguson Municipal Public Library stayed open during all the social unrest in Ferguson and became a safe haven to journalists who were afraid of like staying on the streets, because when riots are happening, you never know, like you could be a bystander and accidentally get injured. And so during the actual like crisis, the library stayed open. They only closed twice, and that was because there were demonstrators right in front of the library, so they felt like it was safest for everyone inside to close. But not only that, they stayed open afterwards. So I don't know if you're aware of this, and I didn't know this until recently, but the schools in Ferguson actually shut down during all of the stuff that was happening there. And so the librarians there decided to almost create like an ad hoc school at the library. So the teachers who couldn't teach at the high school because in the middle schools because they were closed were coming into the libraries, and the parents were dropping their kids off at the libraries, and they actually had like a check-in, check-out, like custody type thing where, you know, you could only be checked out by your guardian who dropped you off.
Oh, wow.
And the teachers continued to teach the kids. And it's not like they could do like their regularly scheduled lesson plans, but like anything is better than nothing, especially when there's so much confusion in your community.
Well,
so
and what better space to like pull resources from? You could probably teach a better lesson at the library than you can with your measly public school in Ferguson, Missouri resources, you know, because I can't imagine a school in that community is going to be overflowing with resources, unfortunately.
So I thought that was really awesome. But then another thing I learned today was that the library also had these things they called healing kits that people could come get from the library. And it was basically like a little package that came with books about coping mechanisms, materials about civil rights history. And it was it wasn't to get the library involved politically, but it was more of these are the materials we want you to use so that you can make sense of what's happening in your community. And so that way you can feel safe, you can be informed. And so I think it's really interesting when libraries become like advocates like that, because
that's really, really cool.
yeah, I know some people probably would interpret that as taking like a side in things and getting political, but the whole point of a library is to provide people access to information to help them improve their lives. So I feel like that kind of falls under that.
Well, and another cool thing that you had talked about too was, which is kind of like taking a side, but like all of the ethics that are involved with being a librarian, kind of like taking the Hippocratic Oath of being a doctor. You were basically talking about how, you take this oath of, I promise that I am going to do my duty to provide information to people regardless of whether I agree with it or not. And I think that's really amazing too.
Yeah. So one of the codes verbatim is, we uphold the principles of intellectual freedom and resist all efforts to censor library resources, which I think is great, because who is a librarian to decide what you can and cannot read or watch or listen to? But it kind of becomes this catch-22. And this is something I see a lot of in one of the library groups that I'm a part of on Facebook, is that they don't like to have internet filters on computers at libraries because you don't want to prevent people from accessing information. But that's when you get into trouble, when people come in and like access like porn on the computer. So it's like this really fine line of, how do we keep like the kids in the libraries from preventing that kind of stuff while not censoring computers and like filtering what people can and cannot access.
Right.
So, I mean, it's kind of it's like a catch-22, but I think it's important that everyone should have the right to be able to read what they want to read. And then another part of the code that I found today was that librarians cannot allow personal convictions to interfere with providing access to information. And I thought that one was kind of funny, because I know quite a few of my friends who are librarians where every time people came in asking for 50 Shades of Grey, they like rolled their eyes and did not want to give that book out and wanted to just like shake the people and say, I will give you such a better book. Like, read Outlander, read like anything else other than 50 Shades of Grey. But because they've agreed to these ALA code of ethics, they do not do that. And they give people the books that they want, because they're not there to judge people for the books that they're taking out, even if they don't agree with them.
So I think we can pretty much agree that libraries are the coolest place on the planet. Yes. Everyone should go to them. Librarians should be national treasures. But what if I have my research, I don't need a space to write, and I don't understand why I need a library? What else can a library offer me?
Well, have you ever wanted to make like a 3D plastic dinosaur or something? Because I totally do.
Hasn't everyone? I don't want to be friends with someone who doesn't.
Exactly. Libraries have maker spaces now, and who doesn't like to make stuff?
Nobody. The people who don't like to make stuff are the same people that are like, I don't really like cookies, and those people are those are garbage people. Right. I refuse to be around
cookie people.
Yeah. And I mean, I can understand
like sunny days. Who is it?
Yeah. Music, happy. You know what I hate? Joy, flowers, the sound of children's laughter,
puppies. Meh.
Yeah. So libraries they've realized that not everyone wants to check out a paper book anymore because of the internet. And they also realize that not everyone needs like a safe space all the time. But people don't always have access to awesome things like 3D printers, because I don't even know how much a 3D printer costs. I'm just going to say $1,000 sitting around just so I can.
Probably way more than.
I don't know.
Well,
I never looked. I don't want to know.
Every school that I've been in that had a 3D printer had to get it through a grant. So it's kind of like what you were talking about earlier with the digitization and stuff like that. So I assume if it's something that small schools can only get on grants, it's way out of their expenditure for something. So I don't want to call it frivolous, but it's certainly a luxury to have in a place like where I work.
Yes.
And libraries, because they want you to have access to things like information, they want you to be able to learn how to do things like use a 3D printer and make dinosaurs, because that's really all I want to make with a 3D printer. I just want to create like a dinosaur army, but let's neither here nor there.
I want to make neon vampire teeth.
Yes, you could do that. So when I was reading about it, I found an article about this library in upstate New York called Fayetteville Free Library. And it looks like they were one of the first libraries to like jump on this bandwagon of like maker spaces because like hipsters love to make stuff. So like
Shocking.
I know. So that's what we do these days. Everyone's an artisan. And they started off with this 3D printer. And now they have over 2,500 square feet. And they have this thing called the Fab Lab, which is their fabrication lab. And they also now have a creative lab that's meant for like teenagers. And they even have a kids lab. And they
That's
have
really
like
cool.
woodworking tools there, like things that not everyone has
Wow.
access to. Because like I don't have a drill press, I don't have a 3D printer. But if I go to a library with a maker space, I now have access to these things. And I can learn new skills and maybe find like my calling of making plastic dinosaurs.
Nice.
Say though, I have a space. I have my own 3D printer, but because I spent thousands of dollars on that, I now cannot learn how to play the French horn because I have spent all my money. But it is my greatest ambition to play the French horn. How can a library help me?
Did you know that you can check out instruments at certain libraries? I don't actually have the name of the library now because Christine's the one who found it, and
Yeah, it was one
the
of the
Philadelphia
I think it was
library.
the
It's
Philadelphia Library. Yeah,
in
we
these
gotta
notes
check.
apparently, which I'm a failure.
Oh,
You had one job.
I had one job.
the
Yeah,
Free
see,
Library of Philadelphia.
is that what it was?
Yep.
Oh man, you guys have a really good library system. So anyway, there's libraries that actually have instruments you can check
Look,
out.
and they do have a ukulele, like you were
Yes.
talking about.
I mean, you can't just like go check out like a tuba, even though that would be super awesome because who doesn't want to know what it would be like to like carry a tuba? I would. Maybe I'll go 3D print a tuba now. I don't know. Like
It would certainly
Ooh,
be lighter, but I don't know if it would sound
that
the same.
would sound weird. Yeah.
the world is my oyster now because of libraries. So yeah, you can rent out things like guitars, ukuleles, other small instruments.
Mandolins.
Mandolins.
Banjos.
What about banjoleles?
It
Oh,
doesn't
that's a
say
good
that in
one.
the
Then
article.
I'm not
but
interested.
maybe.
What about a harpsichord? I've always loved a harpsichord.
Accordions?
Shall I do internet research and
No, it's okay.
answer these
Okay.
questions
The only
right now?
thing I'm truly concerned about is can I run a didgeridoo? Because deals off if I
You
can't.
know, women aren't supposed to touch didgeridoos.
That's kind of phallic and sexist. I wonder why.
But yeah, so
So
it's
are
pretty
you saying-
awesome.
So for me to play a
Okay.
didgeridoo, it would be a didgeridoo. Don't.
A
Correct.
didgeridoo.
But say you wanted to check out a ukulele and something else, a 3D printed tuba, but you're like, I don't have the software I need to record my awesome new debut album. A lot of libraries now have digital spaces where you can do things like record music, record podcasts, such as this one, use
Ooh.
video editing
could get-
software.
Access to fancy microphones.
Probably.
So
Yeah,
what
you
we all
could.
need to do is start recording at the library. Got it.
Yes. Some libraries have access to like Final Cut Pro and have like digital labs with computers where you can use video editing software that people like me can't afford because I can't afford Final Cut Pro. Not that I would know how to use it, but yeah.
You could teach yourself.
Basically, if you go to a library, you can research for a TV show and make a TV show about 3D printed dinosaurs and do stop motion animation in the creative lab at your library. And then you can record the entire score there on instruments that you've checked out from the library.
And then the credits would just say library.
Yes. So basically, I have found my calling because of this podcast, and now I know what I must do tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
So unofficial
Right, Riley.
announcement, we both decided earlier that any future projects involving IndiePen, which is going to be our independent project starting in 2017 for all your writerly needs, any research-based stuff is going to be through our new e-librarian, Caitlin Brodicke, whether she wants it to be or not. So
I love researching, as you
hired.
noticed. So you tell me to research something, and I'm going to come back with like 5 pages of notes, and I'm
Yeah,
going to be
and then
like,
you'll
I can't
keep-
wait to tell
I've
you.
noticed you have continued to research like every single day.
Listen,
New fact.
I get bored pretty easily.
It's great.
It's like
Very
I can't
useful.
sleep to the internet.
Or
I mean,
the
who-
library.
Yeah. Who hasn't fallen down like the Wikipedia rabbit hole?
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's the last thing that I want to ask you before you
drunk
give
opinion
us
coming in.
before you give us an anecdote to leave us with that is both heartwarming and sadly touching at the same time. As a librarian, how do you feel about things like Wikipedia? Because I have gotten into pretty aggressive fights with my co-hosts over Wikipedia, because as a historian, I also too know how to research, and I know the benefits of going to a library versus just hopping on Wikipedia. So how do librarians such as yourself feel about a source like Wikipedia?
Basically, I feel like if there is any source that gets people learning, I'm for it. That doesn't mean I think Wikipedia should be the end all be all to learn things, but I think it's usually a good starting point to get an idea or a better understanding of a certain topic, because usually Wikipedia always has like that little synopsis at the top, you know? And I'm not going to lie, the Freedom Libraries thing, I originally found that on Wikipedia. Then I went to the citations at the bottom to see what sources they had used and kind of use that as my jump off point to do further research.
Which that, in my opinion, is the only good use for Wikipedia, because I simply do not feel like I can trust a word on that besides the links on a Wikipedia page.
Yeah, but I think Wikipedia editors are usually pretty quick about that stuff, because we've seen times where like someone will like hack a Wikipedia page and put something like funny or whatever, crass or whatever. And I think that the people who volunteer to be editors of Wikipedia really take their roles seriously. So I generally trust it, but if I would never cite it, of course, because that's like ridiculous. But I would never cite it as fact without doing further research and see like where did this citation come from. But like I said, I'm kind of in that camp of I don't think it's bad if not everyone likes researching, not everyone likes learning, but if something like Wikipedia gets someone learning about something and get someone started to be interested in a specific topic that they might not have found otherwise, and it leads them down that path to learn more, I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think more people need to get excited about learning things and kind of go on that little research adventure.
As a teacher, I can totally get on board with that, and I completely agree. But if you totally research your book on Wikipedia and don't go to any of the links or sources or to a library or to any other website, like if you just write your whole book and any kind of historical or cultural thing off of Wikipedia, your book's going to suffer for it.
Oh, I agree with that. But like I said, I love to fall down the Wikipedia rabbit hole, but I'm never going to like 100% believe everything I read. But it's a good place for me to like learn, especially like their citations.
You can get a lot of topics very, very quickly on Wikipedia.
Yes. And I'll admit, like, I use wiki stuff when it comes to like fandom. Like if I need to look up something about Supernatural, I'm gonna go to the wiki.
Or if it's need to look up
when
something.
I need to, like it's when I like how you question that. But yeah, when I
research must be done.
Know something that I can't find on, say, IMDb, or if I have to look up something about a book series, like a fiction series, or if I have to look up something about a video game, that I find is an exceptional use of, or an acceptable use of wiki. But like if I want to look up the War of 1812, wiki is not my go-to source on that. But I understand for people who don't have the background that I do in research and history, and don't have the opportunities that we've had for understanding the resources available. I get you Google, it's going to be the first thing that pops up. But please, for the love of all that is holy and merciful in the universe, go to the bottom and click on the links.
Exactly.
So.
But the Wikipedia rabbit hole is kind of fun. There's like that little, I'm going to like totally Godwin this podcast right now. But there's a thing on Wikipedia that like within so many clicks, you'll always get to something related to Nazism or Hitler. And it works every time. It's so weird.
So it's like an anti-Semitic 6 degrees of separation?
It's 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but with Hitler on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever happened to me.
I've tried it a few times and it's worked, and it's kind of scary. And it's also funny. Because like everyone hates when someone Godwins a conversation where it's like, we weren't even talking about that. Why did you bring up Hitler? And, like, I think it's funny that like Wikipedia does that, because it's like they know. Because everyone's been in that history class. I know Becky knows what I'm talking about, where like you could be talking about like some
You could be talking
dynasty in China that happened
exactly what I was gonna say.
hundreds of years before Germany was a thing, and someone will bring up Hitler.
Well, that's because China is right next to Japan, and Japan and China didn't get along, and Japan was, an ally with Hitler. So
yes,
it's a very easy, slippery slope. But what it cracks me up that you should say that about me being in history class, because the worst case of that, I took a Soviet history class, and I was so geared up because so many times in your high school classes, you don't get to the 20th century, let alone the Cold War or anything after World War II. So I was so ready to finally learn about all of the shit that happened after 1945. And we spent the majority of the class talking about Dr. Zhivago, which did not take place during the Soviet Union, Christianity, which was a huge no-no in Soviet Russia, and Hitler, who was Stalin's worst enemy, and how communism and fascism were separate things. And we had to talk about that because so many morons in my class did not understand that fascism and communism were totally opposite concepts.
I feel like I just made you hate Wikipedia more.
No, you didn't make me hate Wikipedia more. You made me hate people who don't understand basic historical concepts.
Becky hates people.
I do, which is why I'm a teacher.
The children are our future.
And that's why I have to save them now. So that being said, I am going to, since I've already been ranting enough this evening, I am going to save my unsolicited advice because I think the anecdote that Caitlin shared with us on Thursday is way more beautiful and heartwarming and wonderful. And I think we should leave on a positive note instead of me just like spewing vitriol because I'm a little drunk tonight. So Caitlin, would you please share with us the story that you told us about your friend who's the teen librarian and was the LGBTQ advocate?
Yes. So I have a friend who goes by Crayola, like the crayon, and she is super awesome. And she is a teen librarian, actually in Illinois, but she just accepted a job in Missouri and is leaving.
That's Illinois. Okay, because I have a feeling that people of her caliber that are advocates for the LGBTQ plus community are more needed in Missouri than they are in Illinois.
And since I'm friends with like a crap ton of librarians because of library school and because of Ravelry, shout out to all the yarn people on the internet who are super nerds.
And I can confirm that all librarians knit because one of my best friends and my / adopted sister is a librarian and knits, and she's the only reason I know about Ravelry. So I can confirm that is a direct fact.
So I asked her if she had any stories, anecdotes, anything she'd be willing to share for this podcast. And I'm just going to read exactly what she sent me word for word. So yesterday I was talking with one of the kids from Anime Club, started out continuing a conversation from last week's club meeting about a particular anime series, and then conversation wandered as it does, and it came up that this kid really wanted to move out of their parents' house because their parents say a lot of bigoted things. They are in 8th grade, so they have a little while to go before they can do that. But then the kid mentioned that he identifies as trans and pansexual, and that was part of the problem because parents just don't understand. So when I told him that if he wanted to use different pronouns while he was here, this is absolutely a safe space, and we won't share it other places or let anyone bother you about it. It's up to you if you want to do that or not. Which pronouns would you prefer that I use? And he said he, him, so that's why this story uses those pronouns incidentally. But after that, I told him that everyone who works in the teen space regularly is very supportive, but some are still learning, so it's okay to correct people politely if they mess up. And if he ever has any problems anywhere in the library with staff or other patrons, he can always come talk to me specifically about it. His eyes got wide and he came around the desk and gave me a hug, and we really aren't supposed to get hugs from kids, but I think this kid really needed it. And he was just so happy and shining after that. He has always been kind of perky. That's also part of what pushed me to finally make pronoun buttons for myself and the teens, incidentally, and at least one other coworker of mine is going to wear a pronoun button while she's at work too.
Yeah, I saw that.
I think that's an incredible story. Awesome. And it kind of makes me wonder that if I move into the library, since they are technically safe spaces, does that mean while I'm in the library that Donald Trump is not technically our president? Please tell me it's true so I can move into the library. Please. Please.
I mean, the libraries will always be a safe place for you.
So while I'm there, Donald Trump doesn't have to be president. Gotcha.
While you're there, you can Google all of the Joe Biden memes that your heart desires.
Oh my God.
Saving everyone right now.
I take it back. I am not going to give unsolicited advice, but even though that is a beautiful story, and I would absolutely love to leave on that note, I do have to
We're not
share.
going to.
We're not going to, because that is not our style. So I will make sure that this gets up somewhere so you guys can see it if I have to put it in like the show, like comments or whatever. But my favorite Joe Biden meme that I have seen so far, Wyatt actually sent to me. And it's like one of those pictures of like him pouting in the window, like through the Oval Office window. And the commentary up top is, Joe, we've talked about this. Your advice to the incoming vice president cannot be get fucked, Hoosier. And then the comment is, but that motherfuck, and it's like, Joe, and then the next thing is him pouting in the window.
I hope
They're
they
all
go on a
good.
comedy tour and just reenact all the memes
That would be
once
great.
they're out of the office.
My favorite one is the one where he says, I left a Kenyan passport in your desk just to fuck with him. And then
a prayer rug.
and in a prayer rug
In a
in your
prayer rug,
bedroom,
yeah.
he's going to lose it. And Obama's just like, damn it, Joe.
Joe. The other one that I saw was, Mr. President, can I speak with you about this really important national security matter? And like he pulls him aside, and it's like it says in parentheses, Joe whispers to the president, okay, I've got 2 Nerf guns, and when the Republicans come in, we're gonna shoot the shit out of them. And it's just like, Joe.
I love Joe Biden.
I do too. I am going
Okay.
to miss him. I hope he stays somehow involved in politics. And you know what? She may not be the best. She may not be likable. You may not agree with her. But she is, to me, the first voted in female president of the United States. So I don't care if you like it or not. I don't care if you like me after this. My last drink of this beer is going to my president, Madam President Hillary Clinton. So with that, I would like to say, may your drinks be shared. I will
May
thank
your
our
drinks
guests.
be shared.
I thank our guest, Caitlin Bredicke, for joining us tonight on an amazing episode. Dare I say, the best interview we've ever done. Not to belittle anybody else, but this went fairly smooth.
It's a tough competition.
It is. I thank her. I thank everybody who joined us, aka Chris, who seems to be the only person that I noticed in the chat tonight. My co-host Christine. Remember to follow us on Drinkshares LC on Twitter, our Facebook. Find us on Inkshares, various places like Janello. If you have any questions for us, be sure to tweet them to our individual Twitters or to Christine at DLC at Drinkshares LC. If you have any research-based questions, send them to us. We'll make sure we pass them along to Caitlin. I'm sure she would love to nerd out and wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and do some Wikipedia searching for you. So any questions, shoot them our way. And stay tuned. So we have next week.
Next week, we're going to have Regina, in 2 weeks.
Yeah, you know what I meant.
Regina McNamee, author of Mothering the Game. And we're going to talk about gender and writing about the other. So that'll be a really, really fun topic.
If you think that I complained this week about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, you better bet next week it's going to be a shit show. So stay tuned for that. Once again, thanks for everybody for joining us tonight. And to my president, may your drinks be shared.
May your drinks be shared.